Hi everyone and welcome to another live Q&A. My name is Cédric Marin. I'm a Canadian immigration lawyer. We had some technical difficulties and I do apologize for starting a little bit late. You're going to see that there's actually none of the graphics or cool artwork that we currently have going on. I've been moving around some stuff on my computer over the weekend, new hard drives and whatnot, and I think I misplaced all of those nice graphics. So instead of not doing the live Q&A and then and not doing the live Q&A because I had to update it and have the proper features or graphics, I decided and I said, you know what? Let's still do the live Q&A and um, let's still do live Q&A and do our best with the time and the tools that we have. So once again, ask your questions below. Let me know from where you're joining me from, and I will definitely make sure to go in and let you know about how to immigrate to Canada. Again, I just provide general legal information. I don't provide any actual legal advice. If you would like to book a consult, you can go head over to our website, Holth Immigration Law, and we'd love to speak with you about how to do that. We have Meet, who's joining us already, nice and eager at our scheduled time. He says, hi, Meet. Says, hi to you, Meet. Hope all is well. I can't see your other comment in my program, but I see here that you asked me how was Qatar. Qatar was fantastic. I went to go watch a few World Cup games with Canada, and happy to be back inside of the office. Very briefly, we have some new news to announce. So we had the express entry draw that took place on Wednesday. We can head over here to see the score. So it was 491. So generally speaking, oops, more technical problems. Move this up here. So the general score here was 491. So the score is decreasing. We're seeing more and more individuals who are now eligible for express entry. I'll actually move this at the bottom. I'll move myself up a bit. More and more individuals are qualifying for express entry. So we're seeing here that right now, as of November 22nd, so this is before the draw, there was 3,000 individuals with a score of between 491 and 500. And here there's about 2,000 with a score over 500. So we could expect the next draw to be in the 480s. I'm calling 487, 488, right? More and more people have been waiting on the sidelines that are ready to submit express entry applications since it reopened. And so this is quite exciting. Express entry, for those of you just joining us, you have three different streams. If you're outside Canada, you're most likely going to be looking at the Federal Skilled Worker stream, Federal Skilled Worker program. If you're inside Canada, the Canadian Experience class, head over to this website, this IRCC government website, and head over to Federal Skilled Workers. And here you can read about the minimum eligibility requirements. It's going to require at least 1 year of continuous skilled work experience. You're going to have to get a language test and get a minimum score in 7 in all 4 abilities. These are the most common barriers. There's also points for age, for education. These are very, very important as well. And the way it works, again, just very, very briefly, is that the top individuals make profiles and you get a score. The higher your score, the better the chance that you get to have express entry. Let's head over straight to our questions. There's not a lot that's been happening. We're still waiting for occupation-specific draws, still waiting for ministerial instructions as to see how that's going to play out, but I guarantee you that we will inform you as soon as possible. We do have a new blog, so my colleague Chanel has made a new blog on our website. We're just going to head over there briefly, but it's about study permits. What you need to do now for the 2023 intakes. So there's school intakes, right? And there's processing times, and you have to get your applications properly prepared. And this talks in detail about um, all your information, all the forms you need to do, and pretty much the strategy as to when you should apply for your permit. All right, guys, so there we go. So I'm gonna start taking your questions. Please feel free to keep asking your questions, and I'd love to help you and answer some of this information. So Nihad says, can someone has a master's degree in engineering, which program is best for getting the study visa? Okay, interesting question. So if we actually head over to our website, we have a blog about the most common reasons for study permit refusals, written by Alicia. So we can actually go take a look at that. So it's really hard to answer this question without knowing more about your specific situation. So let's go take a look at why this matters. So a few things. So how long has it been since your last program of studies, right? Do you have a prior history of study permit refusals? Is the program, it's mentioned further down, but is the program that you're applying for in line with your career, right? If you're an engineer and you're applying to become, for example, another degree, can you explain how this fits inside your career and your education? So it's a little bit hard to just based on this information here to tell you about the best program to apply, the best university. But if you take a look at our blog here, we are going to talk about the most common mistakes, and this can help you assess whether or not a study permit is a good option for you. As we've talked about, as we talked about earlier, express entry, so coming to Canada with permanent residence, could also be an option for you. Yeah, follow-up question for study visa. Can I use my work experience to study inside Canada? Yeah, so for sure. So there's going to be, right, you do have to demonstrate, as it's mentioned here, that there's a logical connection between your program of study and your career, right, your education. So your work experience, you could explain that, you've been working as an engineer and now you want to specialize on electrical engineering and you're applying to Canada for a study permit to get a master's. So this is something that that is definitely going to be important. This being said, there's no requirement to have work experience for study permits. All right, Shandon Price says, is it possible to get a full funded scholarship after high school in any Canadian reputable university? I don't know about fully funded scholarships. There are definitely scholarships for Canadians, permanent residents, and non-Canadians to come study inside Canada. I don't know any on the top of my head, but they're rare, right? It's pretty rare that you're gonna get full education, full cost to come to Canada and study, but they definitely do exist at reputable universities. All right. Let's continue here. It says, I have engineering masters and have own business. So can I apply for business program as it be related to my work experience? Uh, Business program. Yeah, so work experience for study visa, as we talked about, it doesn't really there's no requirement to have work experience or prior study experience, but there needs to be a logical connection, right? Can you explain why you picked your specific study program? Can you explain why you've decided to apply to Canada, right? So we have a lot of content on our website, but it could have to do with are you going to have better options, better job prospects if you get Canadian education, right? Why can't you study inside of your country of residence? These are all factors that are going to be important. Kareem here says, I paid $350 for your so-called evaluation, but nothing new added and no one professional called me. Kareem, I'm going to look and reach out to you personally and have Mark as well look into this. More than happy to email and speak to you about this. We don't offer evaluations, nor is someone professional supposed to call you. The way that you book a consult, so I'm not necessarily sure if it was actually dealing with us, but in any event, I'm going to look in our client management system and have Mark reach out to you personally. Let's take a look here. So when you go to speak with a lawyer, we have the option of booking with Alicia, Chanel, Cédric or Mark, right? We're all immigration lawyers. We're not consultants. And when you go ahead and actually book here a time on our website, let me just go ahead and open this new window. When you go ahead and book a time on our website, we have so here we go. So if you, for example, here's my slot. If you go ahead and book on our website, here's the time. Oh, this is not working. But anyways, for Singapore, I put Singapore as the date. You can then go ahead here. You have access to my schedule and it loads inside my schedule. So listen, we're going to reach out to you, Kareem, personally. We meet all our clients with all consultations. I've never missed one consultation. So and again, we don't offer evaluations. We have consultations where we talk about, how we can help you with legal issues, what we recommend that you do, but we don't offer any type of evaluations. All right. Sophie says, hello, can a student change a work permit that shows employee as Seneca and make it open? Let's just read this again. So can a student change a work permit that shows employee as Seneca and make it open? I see. So Sophie, so right now you're on a closed work permit. Is that it, Sophie? Listen, if you're on an LMIE-based work permit or another type of closed work permit situation, you can't just make it open, right? You can't just make an application to come to Canada with an open or work permit. There are specific rules in place for open work permits. So or LMIA exempt employer-specific work permits. So we can talk about both of these very briefly, but to answer your question, no, you can't just change an employer-specific work permit to an open work permit. Let's go take a look here. So under the International Mobility Program, these are LMIA exemption codes. So for example, if you're the spouse of a skilled worker, if you're the spouse of someone who's studying full-time inside Canada, if you're in part of one of these programs, right, very specific programs, Francophone mobility being an important program. If you're one of these LMIA exemptions, you may be able to get an employer specific or an open work permit, but you must meet one of these requirements. You can't just apply to have it changed. So the most common one is spouses, common law partners of skilled workers. So if your spouse is on an open work permit, if your spouse is working in a skilled position, if they're applying to one of these programs here, you may be eligible for an open work permit. So question for you, Sophie, would be, is your spouse meets one of these requirements, right? If not, can you qualify for a mobilité francophone work permit, right? But generally speaking, you can't just change. You have to meet the program requirements for one of these programs. All right. Sophie, again, I can't really provide specific details, but no, you can't just change from closed work permit to open work permit. Reem says, I applied with my family for study permit, but I got rejected. What is your general advice? Should I exclude my family in next application? In next application. um, Listen, that is not necessarily a good option. You do need to declare them, right? Declare your family members and whatnot. Now, this being said, you could list them as non-accompanying, right? So if you have a child and spouse that stays in your country of residence, this could be a factor which increases your ties to the country. The stronger ties you have in your country, the stronger the chance that you're going to return at the end of your stay. And that's what immigration officers are looking for. But you can't just exclude them. You have to declare your family. You can put them as non-accompanying, and you can explain that at the end of your studies, you're going to return to Canada. You can also head over to our website under legal help. We have a section, Kareem, that says under legal help, we have a section that says submit reconsideration request. So I wrote a detailed blog about how you can submit a reconsideration request and ask them to take a second look at your application. It's very detailed. This is really meant, Kareem, for you to be able to do your own reconsideration requests. If you've also had a refusal, you can also look at doing a judicial review and actually going to federal court. And Kareem, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to make sure that Mark and I reach out to you personally to investigate what happened in regards to your previous consult. All right, Tricon says, hello, sir. Hi to you too. Says, I'm from Nepal and I already doing master's in business study. I have 6 years work experience. Which program is suitable? Please, I'm married. I'm 36 years old and I have a master's degree. So, listen, it's very tough. And again, I apologize, guys. The graphics here, I don't have my fancy graphics, and I decided just to do the live Q&A, even if it doesn't look as pretty. But there we go, Tricon. Listen, it's really tough. Look at our website. We have a lot of resources. Look at this top 10 reasons for study permit refusals, right? Contact prospective universities for study programs. You're already doing a master's, right? So why would you need to come to Canada, right? Is it for better education? Is it for better economic opportunities in your country at the end? This is what visa officers are going to be interested in, right? How can you demonstrate that you're going to return at the end of your stay? These are all important questions, and I encourage you, if you'd like to speak with one of us, an immigration lawyer, with me, Cédric Marin, head on over to our website and speak with a lawyer. We can actually review your documents, actually look at whether or not making a study permit application is the right option for you. Is it okay to get spouse open work permit via flag polling? So here, listen, this is quite tricky. Generally speaking, we don't recommend flag polling because it comes with risk, right? What if the border officer is scrutinizes your application in detail and you don't have the required documents, right? What if if your visa's expired and your spouse's visa's expired and you're not allowed to come back to Canada, right? Do you have the proper permits to go to the United States? You're seeking admission to the United States. Do you have a visa for the United States, right? So these are all questions that come up in flag polling, and generally we recommend you to apply online, right? Visa officers administer the immigration laws, right? They look at programs and policies and meet whether or not you meet their requirements, whereas border officers officers usually have an enforcement role, right? So listen, it comes with some risk, and I would make sure that you meet all the requirements to enter the United States, all the requirements to come back inside Canada, and that you're actually able to submit the spouse open work permit at the border, and you meet the program eligibility requirements for your spouse open work permit, right? There's many different spouse open work permits. So listen, quite a complicated question that is really, really fact specific. I don't want to say every time speak with me, speak with a lawyer, but seriously, like these are very specific questions that do recommend proper legal advice. Joseph Moore says, "Hi sir, I applied. I apply um, May 2. My application was completed May 6, and no update. So what can I do in this case, sir?" So the processing times are quite long right now for programs. So take a look here for check processing times. Head on over to temporary residence, and then you're making a work permit from outside Canada. I think it's outside Canada, Joseph. If not, we're just going to make some assumptions, and then I'm going to go ahead and select Hungary. And again, making another assumption. So here you can actually see the processing times is 13 weeks. So my question for you is your application over the processing times? Have you checked your application recently? Have you maybe missed correspondence? Log in and obviously double check that. If your application is over the expected processing time, or if you have an unreasonable delay, I encourage you to go over here on legal help and click on apply for writ of mandamus. In some cases, you may be able to apply to the federal court to compel IRCC to make a decision. So here are the requirements for the tests that need to be met, and the question is going to be whether or not there is an unreasonable delay in your application. This is a formal court proceeding, or going to court and arguing that the delay is unreasonable. But take a look at our website for more information. But generally speaking, you can make a web form asking for an update on your application. You can check yourself for an update, see whether or not you missed anything, and then if you have an unreasonable delay, the other option would be to actually make a writ of mandamus at the federal court. I have experience with representing clients to get the writ of mandamus at the federal court. All right, Trekon says, and sir, I would like to work here. So you're asking about a study permit. So in some cases, you may be allowed to work for 20 hours per week off campus during the school year, and during the scheduled summer breaks, work full time. But you really need to come to Canada with the intention that you're going to be able to work. Ozan says, is the government still considering to launch new pilot programs for international students? As Sean Fraser, so the Minister of Immigration and Citizenship, mentioned earlier, since tier system has been implemented. Thank you. So Ozan, we have what's called there was a program that was announced in the end of summer, I think, or beginning of fall, about transitioning from temporary residence to permanent residence. So this program, it talks about, it's not one program in specific. So I would not expect like this big TR to PR like we saw last year, but I think what you can expect is seeing small changes into current programs for eligibility. And wow, more technical issues. I am now blurry on the screen. Let's change over to this webcam here. See if this works. All right, there we go. So the government, I wouldn't say, is going to be launching a big new pilot program for international students, right? There's a key take. Mark has a great video on our YouTube channel called the key takeaways about the announcement. I can just find it here. It's on our main page, but it talks about small changes to programs for international students, for people that with temporary resident inside Canada. And yeah, you're asking about transitioning to TR to PR. I missed this comment, but listen, I think it's unlikely, Ozan. You've had 2, 3, even 4 years now with post graduation extensions, which should give you the time to gather the appropriate amount of skilled work experience to apply for the Canadian Experience class, right? That's the goal of the postgraduate work permit. So listen, Ozan, it's difficult without talking to you specifically, but I wouldn't bet on a TR to PR program. All right, Pashan says, I have 2 prior refusals for study permit because weak academics in my last education. My ALT score is 8 bands. Is it advisable to try again or do masters in India with good grades and try after that? Listen, you can have you explain the reasons for the lower grades. That would be my question for you. For example, was there a sick family member? Did COVID affect you? Why did you have lower grades, right? And if you haven't explained that, I would definitely recommend that you provide a detailed explanation, right? And then you could consider reapplying it. Also addressing any other reason for refusal, right? A study permit application costs $150 in fees to IRCC, relatively straightforward to complete, but the properly prepared comes into the small details, the supporting documents, the letter of explanations, and I would recommend that if you can explain the weak academics, definitely do so, and if not, yeah, getting a master's in India, then trying after that. But if you already have your if you already have your master's, we're going to be applying to a PhD. I think it's going to be difficult to apply for the same master's inside Canada. Again, we talked about it earlier in the podcast about reasons for refusal. Take a look at our website, but one of them is definitely go to our website. One of them is definitely how does this fit? Why is a logical connection? Or if you already have a master's, why are you applying for a second master's, right? So what are the requirements to convert visitor visa to work permit? Again, LMIE is needed for this process. Listen, I really don't recommend coming to Canada with a visitor visa and then trying to convert it to a work permit. This question pops up a lot. People watch other videos, read other things on forums saying, come to Canada's visitor visa and then switch to a work permit. Done, in and out, done. Listen, there was a lot of COVID policies for people already inside Canada that were essentially stuck inside Canada, that in some very limited cases they were allowed to transition and get a work permits or even apply for permanent residence when they had a temporary resident. But this is really not the case. The Canadian government, right, wants you to apply for a work permit from outside Canada. They don't want you to come to Canada on visitor visas and then apply for work permits. That is absolutely not the case. And listen, we can take a look at the immigration and refugee protection regulations for more specifics. And again, there's public policies that existed for COVID. There's specific exceptions like spouses or very specific programs. So I'm not saying never do that, never come to Canada and then apply for a work permit. But what I'm trying to say is, I don't have more information here, but the general idea that you're going to, make a visitor visa and you're going to say that your intended purpose to visit your friend or visit Niagara Falls, and then you think you're going to come to Canada and start passing out CVs and then converting magically to a work permit, it's not going to work, and that's not what the Canadian government wants you to do. Let's go take a look here. So here we have workers. Let's go take a look here at the general rules for workers. So this is the Immigration and Refugee Protection Regulation, and it's available to you as well. And again, it's not going to look pretty, but let's just make sure that all the proper information is here on the screen. As I mentioned earlier, having a little bit of difficulties with my software today. There we go. All right, a little bit cleaner here. So let's go take a look here. So you cannot work unless you're authorized to do so, right? So don't come to Canada with a visitor visa and start working, obviously, goes without saying. And then here we look at an application for a work permit. So a foreign national may apply for a work permit when entering Canada if they're exempt from obtaining a temporary resident visa. So if you don't need a temporary resident visa, so if you're a national of the United States or France or the UK, you can come to Canada and make an application for a work permit at the border, right? But they don't just give work permits, right? You need to have, a market labor LMIA, right? The labor market impact assessment, be exempt from an LMIA or have another program, right? You can't just come into Canada and say, give me a work permit, right? There's also the work holiday visa, but again, we can talk about that more in detail. All right. So I'm speaking quickly, but this is just an important question that comes up a lot. So I just want to make sure that we answer it properly, right? So a foreign national may not apply when entering Canada if any of these conditions apply to you. So unless you have an LMIA, right, as we talked about, or other conditions. You can apply for a work permit after entering Canada if you hold a work permit. Right, so you already hold a work permit and you're applying for a new work permit. All right, you're working in Canada under the Authority 196. This is an authorization to work. Again, super specific cases. If you have a study permit, you're inside Canada, great, you can apply to a work permit. If you have a temporary resident permit, not a temporary resident visa, very, very important. If you have a temporary resident visa, no, if a temporary resident permit issued under the Act is valid for at least 6 months. Again, this is not your case. You're a family member, right? So if we talked about family members or other specific situations. But generally speaking, you cannot come to Canada. And again, there's exemptions that happen during COVID, but you can't just come to Canada and magically apply for a work permit inside Canada and stay in Canada forever and apply for PR. That's not how it works. I want to come to Canada to give barrister and solicitor exams by Law Society. Can I do that on a visitor visa? Excellent question, VS. I haven't explored this in detail, but I think generally speaking, they require you to have a temporary, a permanent resident status inside Canada. Or have a different. I don't think you can write it on a visitor visa. I might be wrong though. Um, I really focus on on immigration law and express entry and permanent residence and judicial reviews. I'd have to look into more closely in terms of the requirements from the Law Society of Ontario to write the bar exams. It's not necessarily my niche, but more than happy to look into it in detail. If I had more time to do so. Lima says, "Hi Cedric, hi. I think we've been chatting by email. Nice to see you joining me." We have Alex that says, "Hi, for express entry under CEC, can you use foreign work experience points if it's older than 10 years ago?" Um, Excellent question, right? So when we talk about foreign work experience, when we talk about express entry, right? And you've asked this question very well. Congratulations, Alex. We talk about the eligibility requirements. So eligibility requirements. So for to apply under CC, you have to have at least 1 year of skilled Canadian work experience. This is just to apply to CEC. Once you have your 1 year of Canadian work experience, yes, you can use your foreign work experience for points. However, oh, I'm sorry guys, I am expecting a phone call, hence why my phone is on loud here, but let me just silence that. Um, you are able to have right, so then you can use the work experience, but you can't use it if it's older than 10 years old, Alex. So we can actually take a look at that. So if you take a look here at the ministerial instructions respecting the express entry system, and let's go take a look here at the most recent ones. And then we can actually type in foreign work experience, maybe towards the end. And then we can go take a look at the foreign work experience. So the ministerial instructions, these are for points, right? We're talking about points. And one of the requirements is set out right here. Actually, keep scrolling down a bit. Oh, there it is. So is acquired within the last 10 years preceding the day on which the points are assigned to the foreign national, right? So you could, so you're applying it, you qualify for CEC, you meet the minimum eligibility requirements, and you have work experience, foreign work experience from 7 years ago. Yes, the answer is yes. However, in your case, it's more than 10 years old, so unfortunately, you can't lose it. We have Gunnar Boy. Gunnar Boy, nice to talk with you. I know you booked a consult, I think maybe about 2 months ago now. Nice to see you still joining us and coming back. Always good to have you part of the community. And thank you for the paid question. I just noticed it now. I usually go one by one, but listen, I do apologize for the delay, Gunnar Boy. So excellent question. So what happened is that you had during COVID a lot of the visa offices closed and applications continued to pile up. And at a certain point in 2022 or late 2021, they've essentially like split the applications into old COVID applications and new applications. The minister is committed to getting to PR applications within the next 6 months. So that's his commitment that he's made. He wants to get back down. If we take a look at the calculator, though, it's still going to tell us that economic immigration under skilled, is this CEC? Yeah, CEC, under the Canadian Experience class is 19 months. So what this means is all the applications, COVID ones, incomplete ones, right, are taking 19 months to process. And if you applied in 2020 or 2021, your application is probably still pending. But what we're seeing more and more are applications for permanent residence being decided within the 6 months, 6 to 8 month window. I'm not guaranteeing it's going to happen. Don't get your hopes up high, Gunnar Boy. What I'm trying to say is that there's a possibility that within the next 6 months, I know there's a lot of websites that people track and put their delays, but how long it's taking, and I think generally we're seeing 6 to 12 months for Canadian Experience class. Keep in mind that you may be able to apply for bridging open work permit to bridge yourself for your current work permit until you receive your application. Yes, I see here that you've paid for the question. I am NCA qualified and want to come to Canada to give Law Society barrister and solicitor exams. Uh, can I do that on a visitor visa? Again, this is not dealing specifically with immigration. With immigration to Canada, like you can come to Canada to write an exam, right? There's specific requirements for study permits, and generally speaking, if the study is more than 6 months, then you need to apply for a study permit. There's other indications that you can study without a study permit, but generally speaking, it's very limited. I'm just gonna ask Obina. I see here you're spamming some questions. I appreciate if you wouldn't do that. You don't have to post your question, 10 times. Um, Yes, unfortunately, what I would recommend that you do is you can actually call the Law Society, right? Law Society of Ontario, not IRCC. We'll call the Law Society, and you should be able to get to someone they're really quick, within 24 to 48 hours to learn more about your status that is required to come to Canada and write the exam. But I do believe that you need to have more than a visitor visa, but I could be wrong. If you would allow me, I'm going to post in the comments within the next 48 hours. I do need time to just look into this. I'll post in the comments later after to help you out. But really, I think if you call the Law Society, they do have experience with writing this, and they can inform you more about specifically what type of permit you need to have to do that. My PR photo rejected recently. I have sent new photos. How long would it take to get my card? If you're talking about a PR card, usually it's within 3 months. So hopefully that works well. All right, Salim says, good to see you. Wow, we have so many questions in this live Q&A, guys. So I do have approximately another 15 to 20 minutes. I'm going to try to get to as many as possible as quickly as I can, but I will have to go in about the next 10 to 15 minutes here. Yeah, in about the next 10 to 15 minutes. Again, I don't want to use all these questions and continuously say speak with a lawyer and whatnot, so I'm going to skip those questions that tend to be a little bit more case specific and try to find questions that can apply to the most people. I do live Q&As on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8:30 a.m. Toronto time, so make sure to join me for the next live Q&A. Lima here says, hi Cédric, what if I add work experience and express entry profile that I didn't include in the initial study permit? Thanks. Yeah, so I would generally recommend that the new applications that you submit are accurate with all the information. So if you've realized that you omitted information, you made a small mistake, or you made a big mistake, you used a fraudulent document, right? And now you realize that you shouldn't have done so, right? I would 100% recommend that you disclose this in your application with a letter of explanation and explain and say, I made this small mistake. I forgot to mention that I worked in this place. This was an innocent mistake and whatnot. There is always that risk of having a misrepresentation, right? Even if it wasn't caught before, even if they've never made that finding of misrepresentation. So it's really difficult to, without knowing more about what was omitted. If it's just a work experience, listen, it's hard to tell, but I would definitely go forward and disclose the emissions, disclose mistakes that you may have made in previous applications. Keep in mind that even if you get your PR, they can go back, and if they discover that there was an error in your application or something was incomplete, they can go back and revoke your PR, right? So make sure that you do it properly from the very, very first time. So interesting question here. So when we're dealing with a study permit, it's a temporary application. You're coming to Canada with a temporary intent to study for 2, 3, 4 years and then leave at the end of your stay. If you have applied for a PNP program, these are permanent residence program. They're telling Canada you want to come to Canada forever. You want to live, work, pay taxes, and live with a permanent intent. So in some cases, it could undermine your temporary intent, right? In one application you're saying, or one profile or one PNP program, you're saying, I want to come to Canada forever or on a permanent basis. And another application you're saying, no, I'm going to leave at the end of my stay. Dual intent is permitted in Canadian law, but generally speaking, visa officers are very quick to jump and say, oh no, you have not demonstrated a temporary intent. So a little bit tricky to tell you how it's going to impact your application. And to be honest, it may impact your application. We generally recommend that from the very beginning that you would start with your temporary resident application and truthfully come to Canada with the intent to leave at the end of your stay. Is it recommended to submit an express entry profile if I'm on a current study permit? So if you're Timothy, so in your case, you've already have the study permit and now you really enjoy Canada and now you want to stay in Canada, right? We've just talked about this like permanent residence versus temporary resident interplay, if you will. And if you qualify for the federal skilled worker stream, you could have a permanent resident application and hope that you have this dual intent of getting an express entry profile and permanent residence at the same time having a study permit. It's going to be less of an issue now that you're already in Canada with the study permit, but generally speaking, you still have to have that intention, that dual intention of returning at the end of your stay. So it's recommended if you meet the federal skilled workers. So if you have 1 year of continuous full-time work experience, you may want to consider it. Your work experience that you obtained while studying full-time in Canada does not count for the CEC. So you probably can't submit a profile if you don't meet any of the eligibility requirements, but a little bit tricky to be honest. All right, guys, I'm going to try to find our most helpful most helpful comments that can touch and help the most people here. So all follow-up questions. My concerns are slim for 31 years old Canadian candidate with 2 prior refusals, or number of prior refusals have no bearing on future applications as long as visa officer finds SO. So yeah, if you have prior what was your question again? Oh, I see, of improving your grades and the prior refusal, right? My concerns are slim chance for 31-year-old candidate with prior refusals. Number of prior refusals have no bearing on future applications as long as visa officer finds SO. I don't think I fully understand your question, but I would encourage you to that. Yeah, I mean, it could make sense to improve your application and reapply in some cases. It could also make sense, I'm just going to flip back here, it could make sense that if you go under legal help and you go into judicial review, you can read more about a judicial review. If you apply 2-3 times, you keep getting refusals, you might need to go to federal court and ask a judge to overturn the refusals, right? There's strict deadlines, so make sure that you apply earlier for this. It would be quite important to do that. You can also consider a reconsideration request, but again, if you've already had 2 or 3 refusals, the reconsideration request may not be your best options, but it's free, you can do it, and I wrote a detailed blog so you can do it yourself. I actually focused on refused applications, so if you want to meet with me and we can go over your visa applications, how to improve it, explore the option of judicial review, of a reconsideration request, I encourage you to book a consult with me at the very, very bottom. All right, let me just flip back here. All right, let's go take a look here for our next question. Again, guys, I do need to go in about 10 minutes, but I'm going to do my best to answer as many questions. Obina, with your 15 questions here, let's go take a look at this question. I did not receive an ITA last year despite having 502 and cutoff being 491. I updated my knock. I don't know what to do. Did you submit your profile? That's my question for you, Obina. Did you submit your profile? You might have updated your knock, you might have pressed yes and completed it, but you have to resubmit the profile, right? Is your profile submitted? You should also have a screen at the very bottom that says which ones you qualify for. You have CEC, Federal Skilled Workers, you might have a PMP program, Federal Skilled Trades. It should say met. And you should also see your score. Your score at the very bottom is going to tell you the score. And then you need to make sure that it's submitted. And my final question for you is going to be, are you eligible, right? So maybe your study, did your language test expire? Is your passport still valid for at least 6 months, right? Was there any other reason why the profile might have expired? Is your educational credential assessment issued less than 5 years ago, right? Or more than 5 years ago? So it's hard to tell you, but common mistakes happen. Maybe you just didn't resubmit the profile. Or maybe something expired and your profile was taken out. But yeah, I mean, these are probably the most common reason. Um, there was also a glitch going around where for some applicants it was showing that you meet the CEC requirements, um, but I'm not necessarily sure if that's the case for you, especially if you've already met the CEC requirements. But hard to say. Check in, make sure that it was actually submitted, and go from there. And yeah, please keep me posted about the situation. All right. Mohammed says, what is the reason behind the high number of newly added candidates? Even if people are encouraged by the resumption of draws, are there a lot of candidates declining their ITAs? It does happen that individuals do decline their ITAs. For example, you notice that there's a mistake, or notice that they don't have enough time to get the supporting documents. But really, the number behind the newly added candidates is essentially people making new applications, right? They know that Express Entry was closed. They know their score is in the low 490s, and they've waited, right? It was not necessarily a priority because they knew that they didn't qualify. And what I encourage you to do is that even if your CRS score is low right now in the 400s or 450s, we've talked a lot about occupation specific draws. So what we're going to see is draws that are not so much based on your CRS score, but it's going to be mostly based on your occupation, where you intend to live. So this means you still have to meet the eligible criteria, but this is going to allow you to do? What this is going to allow IRCC to do is say, okay, we want all doctors who want to go to Saskatchewan, and they're going to pull all doctors who want to go to Saskatchewan, regardless of CRS score. It's going to be older doctors, right, who don't have age points and have a lower CRS score. Think about it this way: it could also be IT professionals are needed in the GTA, in the Greater Toronto Area, and so it would pull all the knock codes regarding to tech and everyone who set Ontario as the destination, and they would get their ITA. So quite important to do that. Get your language test done, get your educational credential assessment. I know that in January, February, it's March, that's the one it's expected to be announced. And you can imagine that when there's 10,000 people who are all making, all trying to get language tests in your city, it could get booked up quite quickly, right? So that's my only advice is that if you Mohammed is if you have a lower score right now, look at getting your language test, look at getting your educational credential assessment. Make sure that if your police certificate takes months to be issued, that you're on top of that as well. Your police certificate might expire, but inform yourself as to what other documents you may need to do that. All right, Janine says, my husband open work permit is now working under NOC. He started this November 2022. Okay, NOC started November 2022. We're looking for a pathway that he can take. He's an automotive installer and assembler. Not sure if PR pathway for him. So Janine, the whole NOC system has actually changed. And this could be good news for you, or could not. Let's go take a look specifically about for NOC codes. So they have NOC codes now, but it's changed to what's called tier. And this is different. And some occupations are now considered to be tier O1, 2, 3. So now they've changed from the NOC O, A, B, C, D, and now they're talking about tiers. So So let's take a look here. Automobile installer. So tier O to 3 is considered good for express entry and eligible. That's what we have here. Automobile. Let's go try to find the NOC here. Is there automotive service technician? Service technician, truck repair. You can see here how there's different NOC codes. So I don't know too much about his actual, if there's service technician and mechanics repair, or if he's more of a parts installer and servicer. But what I encourage you to do is actually read here the NOCs carefully to see whether or not which one he would meet more. We have examples of titles, but for express entry, what we're very curious about is the lead statement and the main duties. So this is the main lead statement. Here are the main duties. So review these carefully. Here's the one for the, is this the same one? It's a different one. So make sure that you read this as well and compare them both and see which one is most appropriate for you. But it looks like you're saying that he was an installer or assembler. And if that's the case, he would most likely be under this NOC. Again, I don't know what he does for work. I haven't met your husband. I haven't met you. I don't have work contracts. I don't actually know what's going on, but here's how we would assess it. So here we have all the main duties, and if you look at the bottom here, it's going to say the tier code. So here this is actually a 4, so this is not going to qualify for express entry. The other one here is going to be a a 2, this would qualify for express entry. Obviously, you can't do misrepresentations. You can't stretch the facts. Oh, I fixed the tire once. I'm a mechanic for the last 2 years. That's not going to work. But I encourage you to carefully review this with your husband to see which NOG applies to him, especially now that there's the new tier codes. The new tier codes make some programs that were not previously eligible for express entry now eligible for express entry. All right, last question here. Gunnar Boy says, thanks, Cédric. I applied for postgraduate work permit extension 2 months ago. Great. Do I still need to apply for bridging open work permit? So you don't have to apply for the bridging open work permit. Both of them are going to be open work permits. The post-graduation work permit extension also gives you the interim work authorization, right? If you applied under that August 2022 policy, it's going to give you an open work permit, I think, for a year and a half, right, until December 2024. The bridging open work permit is, I think, is 2 years. So they're very, very similar. They're very, very similar in terms of work permits. You don't need to apply for the bridging open work permit. You could still, at the end of the post-graduation extension, you could still apply for the bridging open work permit. I would definitely do it before your status expires, but it's an option. Trying to think here. I think that's pretty much it. It's like the only thing for you is going to be about the length of the program, about the length of your work permit, which you might want to apply for bridging open work permit. But as we talked about, I think 6 to 12 months is quite reasonable for your CC application to be submitted. But it's really hard to predict what can happen, right? Something new could happen, yeah, and it could cause big delays. So there we have it, guys. I need to step out. So nice to speak with everyone here today. And again, I apologize for the lack of graphics. I misplaced the graphics somewhere on my computer, and so they're not loading with the program. But it was a bare bones live Q&A. I know at 8:30 a.m. we get calls sometimes saying, "Where is Cédric?" I know I'm a few minutes late, and I do my best to manage, my client work, to make sure that I do my best to manage and make sure that I'm able to help you guys. Once again, you can head on over to our website, Hove Law. Go ahead here at the top right. We speak with a lawyer and book an immigration consultation with Alicia, Chanel, myself, and Mark. I actually telework abroad, so I have more flexible hours for those of you who want to reach me. If you're outside Canada, I'm available during the day. If you're inside Canada, I'm available in the morning, right? So give yourself the best shot where you're nice and fresh and wake up and speak with an immigration lawyer. I'm available quite early in the morning, but all the way until 9, 10, or even 11 a.m. if you like to sleep in a little bit. So there we go, guys. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you Thursday, 8:30 a.m. Toronto time for another live Q&A.